In this video, we're going to show you how to complete Independent Project 3-4. So it's best to have a printed copy of the instructions in front of you. It's not mandatory that they're printed, but it is much easier because I literally go over and check off each step as I complete them. So it is easier to have a printed copy if possible. So let's start with step one. Step one is to download the start file, and that's what you see right here. If it comes up in protected mode, you'll know it's in protected mode because you'll see a yellow bar across the top. You simply need to click, sometimes double click the enable editing button. And now you can edit this particular workbook. If you need to change the name of your start file, this is the time to do it. I'm going to leave it, but sometimes instructors request that you change the naming convention to something specific. So you can either leave it or change it depending on what your instructor needs. And that completes step one. And before we go to step two, I want to point something out here. You can see right here that there are little number signs in some of the cells right here. If you're unfamiliar with Excel, that might be a little bit confusing. It doesn't mean that there isn't data in there, it just means that the columns are a little bit too narrow. And there are several different ways to make the columns expand out. You can manually drag them in between the different letters. You can hold down the left main mouse key, drag them manually, or you can highlight, you can click on one complete column, or even a bunch of columns, and then click in between any of the letters, and that is the auto width feature, and it'll automatically make the columns as wide as they need to be, no wider. And there's a few other ways as well. So just make sure that the columns are wide enough so you can see all of the data inside. Okay, great. Let's go on to step two. It says create a clustered column chart object for cells A4 through G9. And this is a good time to talk about the range selection for charts. Depending on the chart, you have to select different ranges. In this particular chart, we are going to use a clustered column chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the mouse in A4 and then hold down the left mouse button, and we're going to select all the way through G9. And be very careful that you select the right data. If you accidentally grab the totals column in H, that can definitely mess up your particular chart. So make sure you get the right data. That's very important. All charts are specific on what data they need. Let's head on up. A couple different ways to make charts, by the way. I am going to use the insert button, but if you know some of the shortcuts, you're more than welcome to do that. Click the insert tab. There's the column chart up here. And I'm going to hover over some of these, and you can check them out. It's usually probably the first one that you'll see. The clustered column chart is the first column chart that you'll see, but make sure you select the right one. And as you can see, the chart is now created. It really is that easy to create charts in Excel. And that completes step two. Step three, we need to move the chart object, which just means the chart, to the top left corner of cell A12. And this is also important to note that while there are many automated features in Excel that allow things to happen with just a click of the mouse, when you are fitting charts on a particular workbook, in a particular sheet in a workbook, sometimes you have to manually place it where you want, and then make it as big as it needs to be. And another point to note before we move on, it's also important to make your workbooks look professional. It's just not enough to have the right information. It's really important that you make things look good. So that's why they're going over some of these ways to clean the chart up before they get into the meat and potatoes of this. So I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller so we can see everything. And it says now we need to drag this chart down to the bottom of H30. And get it as close as you can. I'm grabbing the little circle or dot in the lower right hand corner to make that work. Move this up a little bit. And that completes step 3. Step 4. It says edit the chart title to display CGL major sales revenue on the first line. So they already have a placeholder chart title. So if you just click inside there, you can just start typing. Well, actually, you need to just delete what's in there and then just start typing what you need to be in there. So CGL. Make sure you get the spelling right here, folks. SimNet is very particular about whether things are capitalized or lowercase in spelling. So take your time and please spell things correctly. So I put that on the first line. I'm going to hit enter. It's just going to make another line on our chart. I'm going to put seconds, second and third quarters. Doing a quick double check here. I'm literally checking off each step as I go, and I'm trying to make sure I don't make any mistakes here. So a lot of times what I like to do is just make sure it looks good. I click outside of an object to make sure it looks the way it needs to look, and I think we're pretty good there. So that completes step 4. It says step 5 says apply chart style 14 to the chart. So we'll definitely need to be clicked outside of this individual object in here. Click somewhere in the white space up above this area and here. Charts are pretty finicky. If you actually click on a particular object in a chart, you'll then be manipulating that particular object. So make sure you're not necessarily clicked on an object inside the chart. And if you want to make sure that you're on the whole chart itself, you can usually click on the edge somewhere, and that'll ensure that you're not somewhere in the middle on a particular object. So in this particular task, we need to apply chart style 14. Up in the top here, there's a drop-down menu. Make sure you're on the Design tab. If you happen to be on the Format tab or somewhere else, make sure you're on the Design tab, the drop-down menu, and hover over these until you see Chart Style 14. You can see how things change. And this is a really nice way to jazz up your charts. Chart Style 14, I click it, it locks it into place, and that completes step 5. Step 6, format the first line and the second line of the chart title to a font size of 20 point. So let me click back in to this particular title, and I want to make sure I'm doing exactly what the instructions say. It says format the first and the second line. So I'm going to highlight the first and the second line. Couple different ways that you can change the font size. You should see this little breakout box show right there. Should be on 16, but whatever it's on, make sure it's on 20. Just punches it up a little bit. And I'm just going to click outside of that just to make sure it's in there. And that completes step 6. Step 7. It says apply a half point black text 1 outline to the chart area. So if you clicked outside of the chart, which is quite all right, make sure you click back into the chart, and I'm clicking on some of the white space here or the edge. You do not want to click on any of the objects in there, as you'll be manipulating the individual objects and not the chart outline. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the chart outline, and if you're not aware of this already, you should have 2 new tabs up here, Chart Tools tabs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in the first one. It says Design, and I'm looking around. I can't really see anything that has to do with the formatting there. So then I click the Format tab, and okay, this is where I format things, which is great. Somewhere towards the center top, might be a little hard to see on your screen, but it should say Shape Outline. So what I do is click that down button, and I want to first make sure I'm getting black text 1, and if it's not already selected, it's one of the choices down here. It's probably the first black box. I hover over it, says black text 1, select that, then I go back in here and I want to make sure the weight is half point. It may already be, but this is a good time to check. You don't want to get this little step wrong. In fact, on my particular assignment here, my particular workbook chart, it is not. It's on 3/4. So I'm going to click half, and that just makes it slightly thinner. It's a little bit hard to see, but it makes it slightly thinner. And now I'm just going to click outside of that chart area, and that completes step 7. Step 8, it says verify that the chart is still selected. In the highlighted range in the worksheet, drag and resize the pointer to remove the design consulting data series from the chart. This is a bit wordy, but it's really not that hard to do. When you decided to make the chart, what you did is use information from these categories right here, different rows of information, right? And those bits of information are represented down here on the cluster chart right here. See, these different columns represent each one of these rows. That's not a problem. What we need to do is remove the design consulting row information here, and it's represented by these little teal or these little light blue bars right here. So we need to get rid of that. So a couple different ways to do it. I'm going to click back into the chart here. And I'm not going to select an individual object, although I could, but if you click any of these bars right here, it'll just select all of that individual bar. I'm clicking in the white space up here just to make sure that everything's selected. And what you should see is the range of data that you created the chart with. That should be outlined with a slightly different color. And what we need to do is make sure we're not selecting design consulting. So in the lower right hand portion of that selection area, it's a little arrow that goes from the top left to the lower right. Definitely hard to see on this video, but you need to click right in the lower right hand corner of this. And then if you hold down your mouse button, you can then change the ranges. And what I'm doing is literally moving up just one row. And when I release it, let me scroll back down here. The design and consulting range worth of information is not showing up down here. Got rid of it. Let me do that one more time. If I'd like to change the range of data that's included in this chart, I hover to the lower right hand portion of the selected area, and then I can move it wherever I want. It's a little bit tricky sometimes, I'll admit that, but I make sure it ends on fountains and irrigation in the corner of it's selecting row G there and fountains and irrigation. And then that should work for that, and that completes step 8. Step 9, create a 3D pie chart for cells A4 through A9 and cells H4 through H9. And you might be saying to yourself, oh, a pie chart, that's one of the most simple types of charts. This should be really easy. And it is. However, I will tell you from teaching a long time that making pie charts is a little bit tricky because you have to select the perfect range of data. You have to select the right range of data for all different types of charts, but a lot of times the information is not contiguous. Let me show you what I mean. First thing we need to do is we need to come over here. I'm just clicking in cell A4, holding down the mouse button, selecting all the way down to A9. That's not a problem. And then it says select H4 through H9. Well, if I do that, it deselects the previous selection. So here's what I need to do if you're not familiar with this in the Microsoft products. And in fact, many products, many programs on the web, if I select what I want to select, then I'm literally holding down the control key, it's still holding down. I can then select data that's not touching this. In this case, we want the total data over here. I select that. Now I can release the control button, come back up to the insert button, click pie charts, it's a little circle up there, select 3D pie chart, and voila, we now have that. So next we need to move this to its own sheet. Pretty easy to do. We need to make sure that this is selected. If for some reason you clicked off of it, it's not a problem. But we need to click back in here, click in the white space. Then you should be on the Chart Tools Design tab. In the rightmost screen, it says Move Chart, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's just asking you whether you'd like to move it and where you'd like to move it to. We'd like to move it to a new sheet, and that new sheet has to have a name, and it's telling us in the instructions we need to call that revenue breakdown. Make sure you spell it right. Make sure you get your capitalization and lowercase right. Very finicky program sometimes. When I click OK, it now opens up in this new sheet. You might say, oh my goodness, where did the other information go? Well, it's just a different tab in the lower left. If I click over Q2 and Q3, it'll open up that information, but I'm going to click back on the pie chart because we need to start manipulating that. And that completes step 9. Step 10 says to edit the chart title. This is pretty simple to do. A couple different ways to do it. If you get the clicks right, if you triple click in here, sometimes it opens up different things. So just take your time. A lot of times I click in it once and then highlight what I'd like to delete. And it says put the chart title as revenue by category. Doing a quick double check to make sure I got the spelling and everything correct. And I'm literally checking this off as I go off my instructions. It makes it so much easier. It also says change the font size to 32. So I'm going to highlight that, click on the Home tab, and it just makes that a little bit bigger. And that completes step 10. Step 11 says select the legend and change the font size to 12. We're going to do that in a very similar fashion. The legend should be showing up towards the bottom of this chart. It's going to be a little bit small on your screen. The reason why it's small is because the font size is 9. So if I click inside that, it actually outlines that a little bit. Might be a little hard to see on your video, but I'm going to come up here. I'm on the Home tab, and it says it wants to make it 12. If I do that, it makes it just a little bit bigger. And that's how you do step 11. That completes step 11. Step 12, it says apply a woven mat texture fill to the patio and furniture slice. Okay, depending on how you did this and your monitor, the colors might be slightly different than what I am seeing here. But if I look down here in the legend, I can see on my computer with my monitor and my colors that the slice that's patio and furniture has this greenish look to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click outside here just to deselect everything. Then I'm going to click on that slice. Now before you go any further, folks, this is really important. If you might think you're just manipulating this slice right here, but you have to look very carefully at what's selected. How do you know it's selected? On my computer, there's these little dots, and it's actually at the corner of each slice right here. So if I go ahead and change any texture, it's going to change the texture of every single thing in here. And I do not want to do that. I just want to change this slice. So what I'm going to do is just click it another time. It's like it's a double click, and I can see a little dot here, here, and right here in the center. That's indicating that this slice is selected. Trust me, if you're not sure, just go back out, do a slow double click here, and make sure that that slice is selected. And it says the texture fill option. So what I'm going to do is you should see this area on the right, this pane on the right, and there should be a bucket with looks like paint coming out of it. It's called fill in line. If I click on it, one of the choices says picture or text fill. That's not a problem, right? And then there's a lot of different choices. I wouldn't mess with any of them now. Play with them on your own. But for this particular assignment, one of the choices says texture. And to the right of that, if you click on the drop-down menu, it actually shows above here a lot of different textures, which is pretty cool. Hover over them: papyrus, canvas, denim. I see woven mat for me. It's the fourth from the left, but please be mindful they change this up a little bit. Sometimes they add more things, so in the future it may be slightly different, might be placed somewhere else. Just make sure you're selecting woven mat. I click on it and it locks it into place, and that completes step 12. Step 13. Step 13 has us add some data labels and format those data labels. So let's start with step 13. says add data labels to display in the center of each slice. Let me just deselect everything. I'm going to click in the white area way to the left. You click to the right of this particular chart. What a data label is, it's a label that's placed on the chart. If you're following along and you did everything right so far, you shouldn't see any data labels at all. And if you don't see anything, that's a good thing. What you'll want to do is let's just click this chart. I'm going to click in the white area for right now. A lot of times if you're not sure what to do, select the white area and that gives you the most choices, the blank area outside the chart, but inside the square here of the chart, but say next to the title. And there should be a plus button up top, chart elements. And what I'm going to do is select, you should have chart title already selected, legend already selected because you see those on your chart. Data label should not be selected, so I select that. And then I choose, there's a little tiny arrow to the right of data labels. I click center and it centers them. You can see them over here. Okay, moving down to 13A, it wants us to choose the accounting format and get rid of the decimal places, make 0 decimal places. So what you need to do is below, let me click back out of here in case you happen to click off this. I'm going to click over top of one of these data points here. I'm going to click on the plus button, the chart elements, the data labels I should say. I'm going to hover over, I'm going to click on that little right arrow. And then below center and inside, outside, best fit, data, you should see at the bottom it says more options. This is what you want. Should open this pane over here on the right. Down at the very bottom, this is why it's a little bit tricky, it should say number. If you click on number, a few things happen. And one of the choices is category that opens up. If I click the down arrow, I can choose all of the different categories. And I'm going to choose accounting. And it should be defaulting on 2 decimal places, but no matter what's in there, I'm going to change that to 0. And then I'm going to just click out here in the white space, and it's going to lock that into place. And if you're playing along at home here, folks, you should see the decimal places disappear. So I'm going to click back on one of these data labels, and we just want to change it to 14-point font and bold. I'm going to click on the Home tab. Click 14, click bold, take a quick look at my instructions to make sure I'm hitting everything that I need to hit, and that should complete step 13. Step 14 says to deselect the chart. What that means is click outside of the chart. So I'm just clicking way to the left or way to the right, anywhere outside of the chart, and deselect it. And that completes step 14. Step 15 has you save and close the workbook. So do that. Step 16 says to upload it into SimNet, and step 17 says to submit it for grading. Best of luck, folks.